is Shawn Henry, former executive assistant director of the FBI and president of CrowdStrike, a tech security and intel firm. Shawn, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming. I appreciate it. So, according to the criminal complaint, as Pamela just explained, the suspect praised ISIS in writing. He even made drawings. He's about to head overseas. But let me play devil's advocate here. Where's the crime? He didn't do anything yet.
Well, you've got to look at what the elements are for this type of behavior, material support to terrorist group. We've had many cases in the physical world, the violent crime world, where people have planned to rob a bank. They've got masks. They congregate. They go to the parking lot. We know they're going to go in. We don't actually allow them to get into the bank where somebody might be harmed or killed, but actually stop them. There's been enough demonstrated to show that, in fact, that is what they were going to do. And that's what happened here, I'm certain.
What does this tell us about, this is not the first young person seized by federal authorities in the last month or so en route, allegedly, to helping ISIS. What does this tell us about the effectiveness of the ISIS propaganda machine?
I think it demonstrates the nature of the threat today, and that this is wide-ranging, it's serious, and that ISIS and other terrorist groups have a say here. With the ability for people to get online, to access this type of jihadi rhetoric, they are going to be recruited. It really requires law enforcement, the FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Forces to be on guard and constantly be trying to detect these threats domestically, within the confines of the United States, before they're actually acted out and somebody's harmed.
What's the enticement for these young people? Just to be part of a cause? They're maybe religious, and this is an opportunity to give more voice to that? Why would they do this?
You know, I think you hit two of them right there. Some of it might be copycats, somebody who's trying to make a name for themselves. Somebody might have some legitimate religious convictions and believe that this is the paved way for them to reach their nirvana from a religious perspective. I think that law enforcement has to look at all of the potential motives. They've got to constantly use the spider web that they have to identify, the tripwires, to identify somebody who's demonstrating this type of activity, somebody who's indicating they're going to harm American citizens here, and then use their capabilities and the judicial process to take them off the field to help save American lives.
I want to play a clip from the FBI Director James Comey from 60 Minutes last night talking about this threat.
How many Americans are fighting in Syria on the side of the terrorists?
In the area of a dozen or so.
Do you know who they are?
Yes.
Each and every one of them?
I think of that dozen or so I do. I hesitate only because I don't know what I don't know.
With American passports, how do you keep them from coming home and attacking the homeland?
Ultimately, an American citizen, unless their passport's revoked, is entitled to come back. So someone who's fought with ISIL with an American passport wants to come back, we will track them very carefully.
The State Department says, of course, Shawn, as you know, that it has long had the authority to revoke passports. That doesn't sound like the American government is fully on top of these young people when they come back. If we know who they are, can't we stop them at the airports before they get on the plane to the United States? Are FBI agents casing their homes if we know who these dozen people are?
Well, first let me say that there's great coordination in the U.S. government between state, local, federal agencies at the Joint Terrorism Task Forces. So State Department has representation along with a whole host of other agencies. In some of these cases, you may have people who are coming in on foreign passports as well, people who have traveled from Western Europe over to the Middle East, been trained there, been radicalized perhaps, and then come back to the U.S. through countries where we have relationships. The FBI also uses the no-fly list, where they've identified somebody that they believe is associated with a terrorist group, may have exhibited jihadi rhetoric, and they'll actually put them on a no-fly list so that they can't get on an airplane. And in other cases, there might not be enough to actually take somebody off of the plane, and when they come here, there's certainly enough concern to monitor their activities. Remember, Jake, there's a balance between civil liberties, civil rights, and safety, and the FBI and law enforcement has to constantly balance that. We don't want to err on the wrong side where people are killed, but we've got to maintain the civil liberties of people here in the U.S.
But knowing what you know from your time with the FBI, if James Comey, the director of the FBI, knows 12 Americans who are currently fighting, I assume he meant specifically with ISIS, not just any of the terrorist groups, Al-Nusra or whatever, but knows them, are those people's homes right now being staked out, or is the FBI keeping an eye on where they might return?
I can't speak specifically about what Director Comey was talking
Right.
about, of course, but I can tell you that the FBI will leave no stone unturned. If there's some indication that somebody is training abroad and somebody is looking to do harm to American citizens, the FBI will use all the resources in its power, lawfully, judiciously, with its partners at the JTTF to pursue that and ensure that Americans are not harmed. It's a very, very difficult, resource-intensive process. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but the American public requires it. We all require it as citizens. We need to step up and do this.
It is very disturbing. Shawn Henry, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Our